This is an Okuma cold water low profile reel. This is the actual model number, a CW354D, and I'm going to be taking this apart today. Now, I've watched a video in the past and actually took one apart using that video, and he did a great job, but it was kind of fast, and so I'm going to do this one slow and give you all the details. So the steps are, we're going to take off this handle here, and then we're going to pull off this side here, which doesn't really have a lot to clean off. Take this spool out. Then we are going to separate these two halves here, tricky part being this line counter. And then we are going to be able to access all of the internals here, and we'll take that all apart, clean it, and put it back together again. So to start, the handle, we've got a screw here, and I've had to collect a various set of different screwdrivers that fit this. Well, I finally got it moving here. Ended up using this Phillips bit with a ratchet. That was really more force than it should have taken. And I'll show you later, but I am putting each part down on a tray. Adjustable wrench. So what I'm going to do is I've got a, oh gosh, there's a bunch of salt in there. See that? So I've got the little tub of water, very hot water. And I'm going to scrape out or brush out each piece until it is nice and clean. Then put it on my tray. Look at all that salt. Okay. Salt off of there. This will come out, but boy, look at all that salt. So I've actually got this tub of salt. I'll show you. I'm going to take this, dip this in there, use this brush, wash that salt off of there. So this reel has been used for, I think it's probably less than a year. It's the second one of these that I bought, and I just finished taking apart the other one. It wasn't too bad inside, but there was a lot of blackened grease, so I replaced that. So I think what we're just seeing now is, no, it's not just grease, it's actual corrosion from the salt. That did not happen on my other one, so it's a good thing that we are doing this now. I feel it's quite gritty with salt, so let's go ahead and wash that off. Now, I'm going to try to pay more attention this time as to whether there's an up or a down on these pieces, but this piece seems to be symmetrical. Whenever possible, I'm going to put things down on the tray as I want to put them back on. I don't see any particular method for whether that one is up or down. Okay, so now we've got this star adjuster. Running super smooth, so I'm going to have to clean this off some more. Okay, I'm going to be careful when I take this off to look underneath. Okay, so there's nothing, there's no rings, I don't see any corrosion or anything underneath there. I'm going to put this next on my tray, but there are a couple parts in here. Alright, so there's a washer. Again, I'm going to try to keep the orientation. I'm looking at the top side, now I'm looking at the bottom side, top side. So now let's go ahead and give it a bath. Yeah, so what I'm seeing so far is this one actually seems to have more corrosion than my first one. And again, I don't see any difference between the top and the bottom, but you can see that the bottom is a little bit more worn. Okay, now this fancy looking thing is the actual click mechanism here. And there's several pieces in it, which I don't think need to be separately disassembled. But, oh, they're starting to come apart, so I'm going to try to keep them together. The top washer seems to have a bend facing down, and there's a bottom washer which seems to have a bend facing up. These two washers go together into this little basket, but I'll go ahead and put those together on my parts tray. Now let's give it clean to this. So I'm going to take a little wire brush. I'm going to do this over my garbage can. Now to separate the two halves, I already loosened this screw here. So you use a flathead, undo this screw. Then on the right side here, you twist it up. And then you're just going to have to wiggle a bit. It doesn't just pop free. Okay. Oh, interesting. This one is plastic. My other one was metal here. So that's different. That's interesting. So you're not supposed to have to really do anything here. I'm just taking a quick look inside. I don't see any problems. Yeah, it all looks fine. So I'll put that aside. And I'll take the spool out. So the spool can be oiled. So I've got this pen. I would suggest you don't get this particular one. I suggest you get the one with the actual needle on it for the oil, because yeah, that seemed like it would have really been an advantage to have the needle. I'll show you why. Yeah, it's interesting. The other one, this part here, this gear, is metal. So I'm curious if they went, and this is within the same year too, so it's interesting that they may have gotten cheaper. So we're going to oil that bearing in there. All right, and then that's pretty much done. And let me take a quick moment and show you what my parts tray looks like now. So I've got these things taped down in the order that I took them off. Now we're going to be opening up the body of this. So we're going to take and disassemble this depth counter here. There's 2 screws here and 1 screw down here, and I believe this screw is a different size than these 2. So let's start with that. This one is a lot tougher than the other one, and I'm seeing what looks like salt in this screw. I've got this device. It's actually for electronics. You can use it to grab chips, but this is a good way to... So I just washed that off. Okay, that's looking much better. Not perfect. So that's those 2, and then there's 1 tucked down in here. This one is a much shorter screw. so I've taken those off, but I'm not actually going to pull this apart yet. I guess this cover tends to want to fall off. If it does, it's fine. You can just take it, but I'm going to leave it for now. So we've got one here, and then two in here. Now these screws, there's a couple different sizes of these screws. Okay, so this is actually longer. Interesting. Okay, so I'm going to label these parts separately. This one I'm going to label as the front. Okay, so this one you can see the diameter is actually a little bit smaller on this left than the right. And this is the front. So you can see, I think all three of these are... Okay, it looks like, so the one on the right and the one from the front are both smaller and shorter. Oh, okay, I forgot. There's one more here. This one here, I'll label as bottom, and let's see if I can compare it. It looks like this bottom one is the same as the one on the right. Okay, now it's starting to come. All right, this piece comes out. All right, you should take it off like this, and I'll show you why. So there are two springs. Here's one of the springs, and now I'm looking for where the second spring went. Here's the second spring. Oh, actually there's a spring on the case there. Oh, here's the second spring right there. So those two springs go there. Now let's take a look at these springs and make sure there's not a up or down. They seem to be symmetric top and bottom. This one's obviously very dirty. Okay, let's take a quick look at what's going on here. So there's actually more dirt in this one than in my last one. A lot of looks like salt. Here on this side of the case, you can see there's a lot of salt around this last nut. Mine also had a lot of salt right around here. And there's kind of, oh yeah, there's a weep hole down here. Now before we take this apart, I want to show you how this works. This is very important. So right now you notice there's two pieces of plastic here, and the angle is the same right here and here. And when you depress the ratchet lever, I'll try to do it slowly, you can see how this is starting to move. You see how that clicks it up? So now this is up, and notice these will no longer line up like that. So this actually confused me to no end last time, because I thought, oh my god, I didn't get this in right because it's not sitting down. It's just that, and then when you turn the handle, it clicks it back into place, and see now how it fits. So again, if I push, it pops it up, and then when I turn the handle clockwise, it sits down again. Also notice there's a very small washer here. And I'll take this off as this part. Other things to notice. So I'm actually going to disassemble this first, because once you start taking this out, this just falls away. And it's very important to look at how this goes. So you can see that the angle is different here, and so you can't just flip it upside down. So notice this angle here and the angle here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this up. Okay, now I'm going to gently turn this over so you can see. Interesting. This is, no, there, yeah, okay. So notice that there's this little groove on the bottom where this sits, because you can put it in upside down and it might seem that it's working, but yeah, so make sure that this groove is on the bottom when you reinstall it. So I'm going to lay these down in my parts tray now. I think I'll go ahead and clean these first. So there seems to be one thing I'm noticing is there's basically no grease on this now. That's bad. It's got to be greased before it goes in. So let me go ahead and clean this off. Well, it's not perfect, but let's clean this off now. Again, the groove is in the bottom, and this is the orientation that comes. So it's got a bend to it. The axle is in the center, so that's easy. You could flip it around like this, is the problem. It looks pretty symmetric top to bottom, but you just have to look for where that groove is. Another way you can tell what is the right way to assemble this is the top side has a little groove where those screws lie on. The bottom side, they don't have that little place for the screw. So it's actually larger physically on this side. That work. Okay, let's go ahead and start taking this apart. So we've got, and by the way, I'm noticing there's a lot of black grease here, so that's not good. It shouldn't be black. Okay, so this tiny one comes off. Then it's got this round one. Now, is there an... It's looking a lot better. Looking inside. Oh, okay, so it's not symmetrical. So you see the top side actually has a square element to fit this square here. So it goes like this. I'm not sure if it wouldn't work if you went like that, but that's the way it's supposed to come. So that's important to note. Okay, now this has a whole bunch of rings. So I'll take them off one at a time. And by the way, I looked at the instructions actually before I talked about that. So this has kind of a stamped effect. It looks like the bottom side is kind of stamped inward and the top side is kind of stamped outward. I don't know if you can see, there's just ever so slightly perhaps of a bump this way towards the top. Okay, it's clean. You can see that it's slightly raised on the top, slightly indented on the bottom. Next comes a washer. These don't seem to be too fragile, but it's made of like a fiber. I'm sure it is possible to damage them. Just really, really coated in grease. Gently rub it one side. Now, is there an up and a down? This side, this is the top, and this is the bottom. Right now, it looks like the bottom has more wear to it, but that could just be the grease. I will leave this in the parts tray with that up. Okay, then comes the actual gear. And this doesn't seem to want to just pop off for some reason. I think it did just pop off in mine. Okay, there it goes. Oh, okay, I forgot. There's another washer in here. It's actually a couple of washers. Okay, so we've got a metal washer with ears. Okay, so is there an up and a down to the ears? This is the top. This is the bottom. Looks to be symmetrical. Okay, so that's washer with ears. I looked in the instructions, and while they do list these washers, they don't give you any way to identify them. Looks to be the same. So there's two of these donut fiber washers. Sandwiching, there's a metal plate in here, so I'm going to tap this. Ooh, that's not looking good at all. Oh, geez, look at that. That is bad. I mean, it'll probably come off, but that's exactly why I wanted to take it apart. All right, let's deal with this. The last one didn't have hardly any of this on it. Okay, so I'm going to now resort to some steel wool, and I'm going to do this in a whole separate tray because it's easy for these steel wool fibers to get intermeshed with the gear. Alright, I've cleaned that off. It's about as good as I can get it. So there's still a lot of discoloration here, but I don't feel anything. It almost looks copper now. I mean, it is a brass, but it just looks copper now here where it connects with the next washer. It's interesting that there's more corrosion where it connected with the washer. Well, it's not corrosion, but it's kind of worn away the brass finish where there was a washer and not so much outside. And then I did a wire brush throughout here, so it looks pretty clean now. So I'm going to put this in the parts tray. Now let's just clean that off a little bit first. Alright, so the shaft is looking good. I don't see any problem with that. Alright, we have another washer here, so this is the a little bit scared to break that washer, so let me get a now I'm going to take the screws off here and here and check for what the status is underneath. So I have tried and tried to get this piece to come out, and I took this piece out yesterday. It didn't come out with too much difficulty. I watched the other video, and underneath there's a bearing. I have no idea why it's not coming out. I even put the star spindle on here and then tried pulling, because thinking it was just jammed in there. So I don't want to risk damaging it, so I'm just going to give up on trying to get that out of there. There is a bearing down here, so I'm going to put some oil in here and hope that that works its way down into the bearing. Interested in why I couldn't get that out. If anybody has an idea, let me know. Okay, so now we're in the reassembly stage. So those were not on extremely tight, so I'm not worried about torquing those up much. Okay, so now we're going to rebuild this. Oh, the other thing I didn't show you is that I took a Q-tip. And again, this Q-tip doesn't seem to fit perfectly. I'd want one with more of a head. So I went through to again clean up all of these areas here. Also trigger it to the other position. Okay, rebuilding. I'm going to show you the parts tray. Show you what the parts tray looks like. So there's them all laid out. So now I'm just going to grab them one by one and reassemble. Oh, here, before I do that, I might as well show you this. Okay, so there's a little bit of gunk in here. I've already used some water in my toothbrush to clean out these areas here. Looks a heck of a lot better. Maybe not perfect. I'm going to do a little bit more. Okay, we're going to oil this bearing in here. And this, I didn't see the other gentleman put any grease in here, even though it looks like there's obviously some rollers and grease. So I'll think about that at the end. All right, let's put these in. Okay, so we got the square washer. Now, the other gentleman was saying he doesn't necessarily believe in putting grease here, but the fact that these two were stuck together hermetically tells me I want to put a little bit of grease between each of these washers. Keep them moving. Oh, before I put this on, let's go ahead and brush some grease. There's the wheel. I'm not sure how much grease to use on this. I want to get enough so that I see it. And we have the eared washer, making sure that it sits in those holes there. Large washer. And then again, this guy is going to indent outward. This piece, the square fitting, goes on the top. And this little tiny ring washer goes on top of that. actually understand why, but yeah, there generally put a little bit of grease there. Oil, so we're both supposed to put some oil up here, as well as in here. Make sure that mechanism works. Let's get grease here. This is going to mesh with the large gear, so this grease will get spread out. So again, the groove goes on the bottom. The two washers. And by the way, so again, it meshes here and here only when the bar is in the up position. All right. Now we're going to look at closing the case. So this thing right here meshes with that white gear there. And this is kind of a tricky operation. This is going to go in like this to mesh. But I found it was better to just leave it out first. Putting it into the wrong hole, aren't I? Yes, I'm putting it into the wrong hole. Oh, there's the right hole. Okay, now I'm going to back it off enough to get this line counter in now. So I can see plastic gear in there. Okay, it all closes. So now I'm going to use one of the screws for the line counter. These are the long ones. This is just to hold the line counter in place. Okay, now I'm going to see if this works. Reset it, and then you can rotate this, and you can see that it's turning correctly. So that's good. And now we can start putting in the screws. This is the front here. So let's try putting in the biggest screws, which are the right. No, it looks like the one screw that's small is the left. That's this one here. This is apparently the small diameter screw. Let's try putting that one in first. Okay, that feels like it's seated correctly. Got it to the right. A little bit tougher. Should be back. Okay. Last one. Case. Okay. Let's just test this out. Okay. I've already oiled this. I'll put one drop up here. I'm not sure if that needs it or not. Put this spool back in. Oh, almost forgot. See, this good thing about the parts trays, it tells you what screws you've forgotten. Okay, so I have to finish putting these ones in. So it goes high. You have to push it down to close it. Actually, just took a moment to review my video to make sure that I got this right, and in case I wasn't explaining it clearly enough, these two washers in here, they're bent, and you want to put them so that they can compress and squish like this. This is the flat washer that goes on top. So I'm going to put this in. All three of these go together. And then the flat one goes on top. And we have a star drive. Okay. This goes.
The washer that secures the nut needs to be lined up exactly with the hole in the handle. So otherwise you're going to have to play with it to get it to line up correctly, like I'm having to do here. But when it's lined up correctly, it'll fit.
All right. Free spin. All right, seems to be back together again. Now I got to test it out in the water, but that's how it goes.